Good morning, Cornerstone. Happy Monday. A great weekend. God is just doing amazing things here in Duluth. I'm really excited to just be a part of what the Lord is doing in the world. For the inspirational vitamin today, I want to share a little bit from this book I'm reading called Emotionally Healthy Discipleship. Um, in one of the chapters, he talks about how one of the mistakes that churches often make or ministers, is that we define success wrongly. And he's talking specifically in this chapter about numbers isn't the only thing that we should measure success by. It is one possible tool, but it's not the only thing. And I love what he says here. He says, you may be asking, if success by the numbers isn't necessarily success, what is? Here's how I would answer that question. Success, according to scripture, is becoming the person God calls you to become and doing what God calls you to do in his way and according to his timetable. What this means is that it is possible for a ministry or organization to be growing numerically and yet actually failing, and that your ministry and numbers may be declining and yet actually be succeeding. All numerical markers, increased attendance, bigger and better programs, a larger budget, must take a back seat to listening to Jesus. Jesus calls us to abide and abound in him. John 15, 1 through 8. What this abiding and abounding looks like will differ depending on our unique leadership callings. Perhaps one of the best pictures of success in the Bible is John the Baptist. John was born into a highly respected family. His father, Zechariah, was a Levite priest with significant education and social standing in the community. It was expected that his eldest son, John, would follow in his footsteps, but he didn't. Pardon me. Instead, John moved to the desert to be with God. A few scholars believe John may have joined the Qumran community, a monastic sect of Jewish believers eagerly anticipating the Messiah's coming. We cannot know for sure. As it happened, John's ministry lasted less than 2 years, and yet Jesus said of him, "Of all who ever lived, none is greater than John the Baptist." So I love this what he shares here, particularly the sentence says, "What this abiding and abounding," in reference to John 15, 1 through 8. So I encourage you to go read that scripture. But what this abiding and abounding looks like will differ depending on our unique leadership callings, right? God has a calling for your life. That was the sermon last year. We have a calling. He's calling us to a higher love. He's calling us to a higher hope and to a higher faith. But it's going to look unique and different for each person, right? What God is maybe asking a single mom to do, it's going to look different, right, than a teenage disciple. It's going to look different than somebody that's been a disciple for 40 years, right? But God does have a calling for each and every one of our lives. And Jesus is still the standard, right? The standard is the same, that we're all meant to be followers of Jesus. But how that is lived out can vary according to the specific calling God has on your life or your circumstances. So my encouragement today is to try to define this success how God defines it, right? That living in his purpose that he has for your life, living in the calling that he has for your life. And how can you do that today? So I love you, Cornerstone. Have a great Monday, and we'll see you out there in the fields.